lot in the shed, but I'm pulling the front diff on the RZR. I'm gonna show you a few quick tips. First, when you're pulling these front axles, okay, make sure you have your hand underneath the shaft when you're pulling, because you're at an angle. Oh, thank you, Grant. My buddy brought me some oranges. It needs to be pulled straight out. As far as your ball joints, if you just bust the top one out and remove your hub with the rotor assembly, and rotor obviously, and caliper, you can actually pull the axle out and over. One less thing to take apart, just makes it easier. Now, my roll pin on the U-joint back here, unfortunately, is facing a little bit down. When I jacked it up, it actually rolled backwards and rotated the shaft. So I'll have to figure that out. But it's going well, pretty well so far. Both axles are out. Grant Man's helping. Now let's drop this aftermarket skid right here, and we'll be able to get to the bolts on the bottom of the differential. All right, so I lowered the bike down, put it in neutral, and actually pushed the bike back a little bit, and got this in the right position. So as you can see, this side, it has a little recess to it, and on the other side of this particular bike, it's actually hanging out a little bit. So you want the flush side, that way you can hammer it out a little bit easier. Now there is a fair amount of stuff that you need to avoid when you're hammering it. So make sure you have a good punch and just work carefully. Then I removed my Tusk belly skid off the front diff. Thank God they're smart, and it's sectioned right there. But these are your 4 bolts, 2 and 2, that hold the front diff to the chassis. So once the roll pin is out, these 4 bolts are out, we'll disconnect, I believe there's a vent tube, and front diff will be free. All right, so this is gonna work you to death. Had an air chisel and a punch. Got the shaft off. There we go. Oh boy. It's a boy. Ugh. All right. Okay. All right, so we got this off. The armature plate seems to be fine. I don't see any tabs missing, or it's not bent. So when we pulled it off, we revealed 2 little pieces of plastic that were sitting in this housing. And I can only assume that this, yep, there we go, it's fully broken. And there you go. Broke the cage. So this should be completely one piece, and it spun it, and there's the damage. So yeah, it just straight destroyed the cage. So new cage from Super ATV will be coming, and I'm gonna also buy the updated armature plate. That way we have a bulletproof front diff. All right guys, finally got all the parts in. This is a hardened steel pin for the ring gear, and then right here is the box for all of our components for this front diff. So I'm gonna open it up and I'll show you what's inside. First, we'll start with this hardened pin. It's from Quad Logic. Purchased it off of eBay. There you go, 20 bucks. Replace the soft roll pin with a hardened steel dowel. Now we're moving on to the cage. Oh, jeez. This is a machine billet aluminum cage. It's their own spring design with their own rollers. My cage broke. It was plastic. The 2015s and 16s had plastic cages. Literally junk. I believe the 14s had aluminum, and which I believe was some form of just cast aluminum. And for 17s and up, I don't know. I know they went back to metal, but this is a lifetime warranty, and it has really good reviews. So moving on, this is the armature plate. And as you can see, it is extremely beefy. It is double the contact points as the factory plate, and you can also see the thickness difference, or the amount of material even right here, because it's magnetized. So this helps from it warping, and then all your extra fingers help from it trying to chatter and jump and bend one of the tabs, which mine didn't bend because the plastic cage completely grenaded. Okay, just a quick note, I actually had to sand this machine surface a little bit because right here, this lip, I don't know how, it was a little bit marred, and you can see at the bottom there's a kind of a groove, almost like a wear. You see right there, those two nicks. I don't know how that happened, but this was actually pretty hard to separate, and I didn't want anything binding inside this front diff. So first I took a little 400 grit, worked it around very uniformly, and then I took almost like an emery cloth or some very fine grit paper, and then brought it back to a polish. That way when you put this together, it spins and nothing's binding. First and foremost, make sure you have the right fluid. And then when you're reassembling, make sure every seal gets wet and everything goes back in clean. You don't want any dirt or debris on this. You will prematurely wear your seals out. You definitely want everything to go back. If something should be wet in oil, make sure it's covered in oil before and not put together dry. So let's get this lubed up, get our seals wet, and then we'll start stacking components. We're going to replace this roll pin right here with that hardened machine pin. So I'm going to just pull out some pliers and then gently tap this in with a punch. So there's your factory pin, and I simply pulled it out with pliers. Very easy, just wiggle it right on out. And there's your hardened steel pin. When you hammer this thing in, I would recommend putting a tiny bit of oil on it so it drives in smooth. It is extremely machine fit, and when it bottoms out, you know, it jumps back through the punch. Very easy mod. I would recommend it while you're in here. Moving on, the spring is staggered, so when you pinch it, it obviously stacks. Let me do this one-handed. So the spring is on, and the retainer also has a pin. My thumb is right here. And it's very important that this pin falls in line with the pin on the gear. So let me turn this so maybe you can see it while I also get it. Go, and yes. So it's very, very important because this thing has to spring back and forth equally. And if you were to put it on crooked, it would jam and bind and possibly break this piece of plastic, which will not be good. So just make sure that everything is in line. If not, you'll be taking this back apart. Now it's on to the fun stuff. The new cage comes with this nice plastic case that keeps all the rollers in. That's for a good reason, because this is a pain in the butt. Now what you're gonna do is slip this over here, obviously with the zip tie off, carefully to where this doesn't come apart, and then stack this in to where you have one complete unit. I'll show you that in 1 second. Sorry, I don't have my tripod, so I can't actually film anything without putting the phone down. So hold on 1 second. Ta-da! It's done. So just make sure everything goes in with oil. The gear itself actually kind of rides on a bushing inside this housing. Make sure that's well lubricated. And then when you slip in the new assembly here, everything goes down smoothly. Just make sure that this seal on the other side comes through, and that's lubricated as well. So hopefully we will never open this up again. Let me get the plate and I'll show you that next. So once again, the new plate has double the contact points, and now I'm going to simply drop it on. As you can see, it's a beautiful machine fit, and that Polaris is what a front diff should look like. Everything is grabbing, it's all linear, and all of this material now can actually be magnetized to rotate and spin from this plate over here. So I'm really happy how that fit and finish. Once again, Super ATV with both of these components, and Quad Logic for the pin and the gear. And why not? Just give everything a nice little bath while we have it. Of course, you're gonna fill this diff and have everything lubricated, tumble it around, but I just like it to be while it's open right now, to give everything a nice little bath. I know everything will be spinning in oil. Okay, the cover's on, and just like anything with a circular pattern, crisscross everything, and then just get a nice hand tight. These are small bolts, so you're looking at like probably 10 to 15 foot-pounds of torque, which is literally just a wrench snugging down tight. You should know the feeling of what these can handle. If not, look up your torque spec. Okay, I actually went and got my torque wrench just for the sake of this video. These are 11 foot-pounds, and your bottom bolts are going to be about 30. And now that it's torqued to spec, this is definitely a time to feel everything spin smoothly with no resistance. Now you can hear all the teeth are engaging. Obviously, it should not be spinning. If it's spinning right now, you definitely have problems. And then make sure both sides spin freely with no binding. Quick side note, I actually pulled the rear prop shaft out because I'm tired of this bearing constantly freezing up. It's done it like 3 times from mud getting in it, and then it sits, and then it freezes, and then it spins in the housing. Gets really old, so there's the new billet housing with a new bearing and the greasable whip for it. But the U-joint is frozen. Let's see. Yeah. So, to be continued on that, but the front diff will be finished today. Nice to finally see it back together, all in one piece. Ah, that is nice. The diff is back in its home. Skid plate's back on. I left the drive shaft disconnected because we're still doing that center bearing, which I will be replacing that U-joint tomorrow. Besides that, straightforward. Tomorrow you will see this bike go down the road. Also, I greased the wheel bearings before I put it back together. Always do that. This tool is like 20 bucks off of eBay, and it will make your bearings last a lot longer. All right, we're back on the bike. The center bearing is installed. I'm not going to put the roll pin back in. This is a 5/16 by 2-inch grade 8 bolt. It's going to replace the roll pin for the front diff. And now we're at the point. Have this drive shaft pushed all the way back. Obviously, you can see we have a new billet center bearing housing in here. Their video from Super ATV is really good on that, so I didn't really show anything about installing that. It's very straightforward. And now we're going to slip that drive shaft onto the spline shaft in the front diff and put this bolt in. Call it done. All right, so the front diff is completely done. The bolt is nice and tight. You want to make sure you really get a good pinch on that. And one more note is when you are buying the center bearing, get the grease whip, and then the video, they want you to install it like down here. Well, you know, your foot might slide, your heel's gonna slide, your boot's gonna eventually keep passing over a Zerk fitting, getting it dirty. This whip isn't long enough to mount upright, so I actually decided to mount it right here, a little bit higher and on the side of the center console. And I believe I had to drill, let's see, a 5/8 hole. Oops, sorry, you can't see that, using a step bit. And then you have to go just, you have to ream it out a little bit after 5/8, and then this fitting will go nice and tight. So let's get that installed. All right, and there's your finished product. Boy, look at that Zerk fitting. That is gonna be nice. So I actually can test drive the bike tonight for many reasons. One, it's about to absolutely storm. And two, they say give that center bearing 24 hours of cure time because of the Loctite. Components were all top notch. I'm really happy with everything. I'm crossing my fingers there's no driveline vibration because it's a solid mount center bearing now. But it does solve the problem of the bearing spinning in the housing. So between that and being able to grease it, I'm really, really happy. And having a new U-joint back here, which you can't see, will also be a nice improvement. That might have actually caused some of the driveline vibration, was the U-joint seized up. I don't know, because the bike sat after I washed it really, really, really good. So that could have been a part two. So if this video helps you, please hit that like button. Thanks for watching, and subscribe.